It's good to have you on. Let's start with TikTok, I guess, because I'm seeing a lot of people say that was your China Select Committee, and it was a remnant, at least in some part, this bill from something that you wanted to legislate.
Well, it came out of the Select Committee on China, which I created when I became Speaker. And really the whole idea of that committee is areas that were dependent upon China, right? It also was looking at critical minerals, the processing, the medical supply, and the whole concept of creating that committee. And the uniqueness is why it's getting praised now is how it worked together. You watched a bill come out 50-0, that Democrats and Republicans, when they have all this chaos going out, how can they still focus on really future issues? The idea came to me on the 75th anniversary of Normandy, actually walking the grave sites within Speaker Pelosi, thinking what could those policymakers have done prior to D-Day that day never would have had to happen. And it's more than a decade in advance. And if you read any of Graham Allison's books, you'll understand 16 times has that number 2 always challenged the number 1, but only 4 times not going to war. And what we really need to do, especially looking at COVID, we became too dependent upon China for medical supplies, for our critical minerals and others. And I think it attuned Congress to start looking further, and that is a success of Republicans. And I give Gallagher and his the Democratic colleague a lot of credit for working together, not just on this issue, but we found where Chinese have come into America, taken over labs, were doing research on things they should not have, and they did the research where government agencies did not. So hats off to them.
Can you explain former President Trump's flip-flop on TikTok?
Well, I think what President Trump is actually looking at, it's a broader question, and it's a legitimate question. It is the protection of the data itself, because we're watching data get used whether you have Chinese affiliation or not. So I think his question is overall. I mean, and this is a bigger question that Congress needs to tackle. You know, if there is on the internet, if a site is free, you are the product. And so just like private property, do you have a right to your own data? Can you remove your data? Can you be monetized if they're monetizing your data? Can you transfer your data somewhere else? And that's a much bigger question, and I think that's where President Trump is actually looking at not just one social media entity, but others as well, who they use their data to manipulate and get you to move in other directions.
Mr. Speaker, I think that's a much more nuanced view than the former president has articulated. When President Trump was speaking about it, he basically just said, hey, don't worry about them because the badder situation, the bigger badder guys, are Facebook. And I think that's a real question. As somebody who has had access to all kinds of classified documents, to all kinds of classified information, how seriously should we take this China risk versus the risk of monopoly or duopoly situations in the United States? I mean, it's a constant theme that's coming up again and again. Are Putin, are the CCP the bigger enemies, or do we need to look at enemies here at the home front?
Look, I think you've got to look all around. But one thing, having been on the Gang of Eight and looking at the world as we currently sit today, I'm really concerned. I'm concerned with what's happening in Congress by their lack of action, the lack of ability to fund Israel. What are they going to do on Ukraine? You are sending messages around the world that are contradicting really where America should be standing. It looks a little more like the 1930s. And the thing that keeps me up at night is this new axis of evil, the Russia, Iran, China movement together. That should be real concerning to America, to Europe, to anyone who loves democracy in itself. And anytime Congress bogs down as the way they are now, they will take advantage of this. You're looking at an election just happening in Russia where Putin wins by more than 85% of the vote. You know that's not a legitimate election, or from the standpoint that number's coming back at. That's a real concern to me on the actions that he's taken. They're very similar to what Hitler took in the 30s. And so we need to stand much better together and stronger as we move forward. But there are still concerns that the power that some of these companies have and the way they use it individually, that does concern me. But when I look to long term, it is the axis of evil of these North Korea, Iran, Russia, and China together that concerns me the greatest of what I'm looking at.
Since we've talked to you, we had a we had a State of the Union and we had a budget, which is kind of, you know how that works. You've seen many budgets in the past. It's not really anything that's going to happen, but very different priorities and policies than Republicans, I think, would put forward.
Yeah, you have a great deal of contrast. And the president's budgets nowadays really don't mean anything because they don't go anywhere. And even their own parties do not vote for them. We've watched a State of the Union that was a much different State of the Union. And I always do reverse engineering on what are you trying to achieve, because at that moment, the bully pulpit, whoever is president, has a lot of power that everybody's looking to them. With reverse engineering that, it seemed as though President Biden was trying to shore up his own support within the Democratic Party. He used it really for a political basis, not to get a bump, not to talk to the independents, not to talk to the Nikki Haley voters, but I think he was a little more concerned to shore up his vote going into his convention coming forward. And that was interesting to me. And if you look at his numbers, he's sitting about 37%. That's a very difficult number for an incumbent, and he's running a different type of campaign. And this is the contrast. I would think President Trump is going to run a campaign, hopefully on policy. Do that contrast, because those issues of the border and the economy, President Trump will win that election. And you look at President Biden, he's trying to run a campaign on personalities, saying, don't look at my policies. You just don't want to have President Trump back in office. Now, who's going to drive the most voters to that? It's interesting to me that when you're running as an incumbent, that type of campaign doesn't work. And President Biden got no bump out of the State of the Union, which is very unusual for any president. So he had a waste of opportunity. He's coming into this Friday, what could be a government shutdown. They have a lot of problem on Homeland Security appropriation. I think both sides will get in trouble for that in the polls. And it doesn't look like President Biden has the energy to turn these numbers around. So it's real concerning if I was sitting in the White House today.
I was going to ask you about TikTok. You think it gets to the Senate? You think and is it a worry about young voters that has this sort of being slow walked?
Well, that's what's so interesting with President Biden. If he took a poll, I think politically he'd be in trouble signing that bill between now and the election to the young voters of what they're going about saying. He's already said he'd sign it. It doesn't seem like any bill moves fast in the Senate. You've got Warner and Rubio on the Intel committee. They say they're supportive, even though they had a different bill. Schumer seems like he wants to slow it down. It did move rather rapidly out of the House, where people didn't get to view it as much. This is a big company. How do you turn something that quickly in those short amount of days? So it'll be interesting how Schumer approaches this bill. Look, the border's the #1 bill, and we moved a border security bill when I was Speaker. We had a Parents' Bill of Rights bill. We had an energy bill, all the top issues that have gone nowhere in the Senate. So there's no guarantee that this bill comes out of the Senate or that anything starts moving, because the Senate has much different rules, and they don't seem as though to get along that well with the House right now.